Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jonathan Paskey, executive producer and co-founder at Dev Network.
Welcome back.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
Welcome back, everybody, to the main stage here at Develop Week Management. It's the end of day one. Thanks for joining us here. We've got a prize giveaway right now for our show up incentive that we've got right before we go into our VIP networking after party, which I'm very excited to get to. We've got some great guests lined up for you now. But first, our show up incentive. Okay, we've got our wheel up for our show up incentive. For those of you that are participating, let's go ahead and get that wheel one spin. We've got two prizes to give away: Apple HomePod Minis. Okay, we have our first winner, Guy Fuck. Okay, let's spin the wheel a second time for our second winner. Jose Garcia. Okay, congratulations to our two show up incentive winners. We are now ready for our VIP networking after party. We're going to bring Shay, Mariena, and Alex to the main stage if we can get them all up here. Welcome, guys. Can you hear me okay? Perfect. Great. Let's do some quick introductions. Shay, let's start with you. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience here?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. My name is Shay Howe. I'm the Senior Vice President of Platform Strategy over at ActiveCampaign. If you're unfamiliar with ActiveCampaign, we're a platform that helps customers deliver their ideal customer experiences. So we have tools around CRM, email marketing, marketing automation, kind of a broader platform for folks to create the ideal customer experience, if you will.
Perfect. Thanks, Shay. Mariena.
Hi, everybody. I am a director of client solutions engineering at Foursquare, where I lead a team that supports our marketers, enterprise, and consumer business with custom solutions and support, and really excited to be here.
Perfect. Thanks for joining us, Mariena. And Alex, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I am an engineering manager at Code Climate. We're a company that engineering intelligence company. Basically, we helping managers and directors and leadership understand their engineering teams by looking at metrics and how their teams are performing.
Okay, thank you all for being here. We're talking engineering leadership, developer management. That's the topic for this conference. That's the topic for our VIP networking after party here. So first question is going to be just sort of a big one. What are some of the major challenges in modern dev organizations? Is it attracting talent, maintaining products, new products, code bases? What are some of the biggest challenges you guys see in 2022 in the modern engineering organization? Shay, I see you nodding. Why don't you start first?
Ooh, well, there's so many ways to take that. It could be around recruiting, staffing, et cetera. It could be around scalability, et cetera. I'm trying to think of even how to pick that question apart, to be quite honest with you, Jonathan. Do you have a preference of which way to take that?
No agenda here. No, literally. What we're looking for is more, the from your perspective, some of the tips and tricks and best practices. I think the best thing we can get out of this fireside chat is the attendees here can kind of take some of the experiences you guys have had and be able to use those in their own organizations and in their own management styles. So,
yeah. I'd be curious about Alex and Marina's thoughts on this, but not necessarily new per se, but something that is like continually and ever present is just the combination of like I think it's called the great resignation, so to speak. And there's inflation, et cetera. Teams are changing shape, sizes. And what does that look like? How do you build the best team? How do you continue to maintain, grow the individuals with you? Not necessarily a new thing per se at the moment, but something I think is very top of mind for us is kind of how we begin to organize and think about the back half of the year, quite honestly.
Yeah, I can add to that. I feel like, the last couple of years have, we still have a lot of the things as engineering leaders we've always been thinking about, what tools we're using, how we deal with our legacy solutions, and prioritize technical debt, hiring. But I think that now we've added in how we work together as something that all of us are thinking about. Some organizations, really leaning into remote work, or having distributed teams, others looking at how do we balance a hybrid of being in office. And that's something I think as engineering managers and leaders, we have not been thinking about as extensively, maybe in years past, as now we are in the last couple of years. But I think that a lot of the problems that organizations have thought of for years, they're still there, right? Hiring, all of that is still going on. But to the point about the great resignation, Shay, I think, that's something that Foursquare for sure has been dealing with as well. The sort of FANG, or what are they saying now, like AMA, these acronyms. It's a very competitive and tight market right now. So I think even more how we work and how we create strong engineering cultures and places where people want to work, where they're growing and really engaged, is even a higher priority than maybe people have been focusing on in the past.
Alex, what are your thoughts on major challenges?
Well, I think this one is going to be easy for me because I went last, so I could just repeat what Shay and Marina said. Yeah, totally agree. Great resignation is top of mind, and in hiring, I think if I had to go into the abstract a little bit, I think it's alignment. And that word is very generic, but if you think about it, depending on the size of your organization, you have so many different opportunities, but so much resources available to tackle those opportunities, and then you have to be really focused on what opportunities you're going to take on. And that focus is something that you need to, like, it's not just you as an individual, but something that you need to build across the organization, and it's hard. And so I think alignment is something that I would say as a really huge challenge these days.
Yeah. Go ahead, Shay.
I was gonna say, sorry, Jonathan. I think we're sharing some problems, maybe not the best solution. So, I could share a little more there and like some thoughts on that front too, as it relates to maybe hiring and retention, because I think those kind of sides of the same coin is how you build a team. But as we think about hiring, like one of the things I think about is what is the actual candidate experience. Like if someone's interviewing with you, it's very likely they're interviewing with a handful of other organizations. So how do you win in that scenario, right? I think when you're saying like super competitive, got to go out, compete with FANG, et cetera. On my side, like speed wins. Those processes can be long. They want you to go through a screening call. You got to talk to a recruiter. You got to talk to 4 different folks before you get to the panel interview, et cetera, what have you. Like consolidate and like crunch the time to hire and make that candidate experience like fast and get to a decision quickly for that person. I think you see acceptance rates climb, right? Like you're basically the first person to offer has been quite helpful on our side. And I think folks appreciate that too, right? On the retention side, it's been one of, I think it varies based off the org or team, but really truly understanding like why does this person come here and show up and work every day, right? And what is like their intrinsic motivations, and how do you align their work to that, right? Because there's things we have to do every day we probably don't love, or things like evolve. But if our drivers are met in different ways to that, and like your leadership truly understands how to best position you to get fulfillment of that and contribute to the business, it's kind of a dangerous combination, right? You think folks stick around for that versus just kind of being a number or dial to move, so to speak. So,
Marina, Alex, any thoughts on hiring or solutions there that you guys have experienced yourselves?
Yeah, just to comment on what Shay's said about the motivation. I remember there's this famous TED talk by Daniel Pink about extrinsic and intrinsic motivations. And extrinsic motivations can be temporary, but for retention, you really need to understand what are those intrinsic motivations that that employee has, which basically aligns with what Shay said. And you have to listen, and listen, making decisions. So yeah, I think in terms of retention is really understanding what is driving and motivation at the front.
I think it's fascinating. The last 2 years, this question that I posed to a lot of the fireside chats has been, based off of moving to remote work and virtual work, where, the consensus that I've seen over the last 2 years of doing these, engineering teams had a foot up, on doing the remote work thing, because there were lots of engineering teams that had gone global, had sort of had a talent crunch beforehand, and were making the adjustment before other teams like sales, product, customer. A lot of these other teams, operations were all forced to go remote in 2020. But it's fascinating in that, Shay, you mentioned this at the beginning, sort of the market forces are changing now again. And we're seeing it's not just a, moving to remote, it's now moving back to a hybrid approach, Marina, as you mentioned. And how does that affect things, right? Just today, I was reading that the, Apple's chief AI ML, I believe he was a vice president, is quitting because they're mandating he goes back to work. And he says, no, I want to work from home, so I'm quitting. So we're seeing, the great resignation, Jay, is, how do you manage all of these forces along the way? Let's get into some nitty gritty a little bit more on the solution side of things that you guys might have seen in your organizations over the last couple of years, and that you might be, apt to be trying going forward. So, for example, I think, Alex, you mentioned this as sort of like a holistic approach. What sort of technical trainings, mentorships, wellness and cultural practices are you guys imbuing into the engineering organizations that may not have been there? Clearly 10 years ago that didn't exist, and maybe not even 5 years ago or even 2 years ago when we hit the pandemic. But in the efforts to retain talent, and to have better functioning, right, to get code out the door, and live. What are some of the things that you guys are doing or seeing done in engineering organizations to retain that talent, to keep the engineering organizations moving? Anybody on this one?
I'm happy to jump in.
Sure.
I think on our side, a lot of stuff, right? We kind of just adapted to remote while we are still remote at Foursquare right now, through, I think, Labor Day. And so on our side, mentorships continued. We did that as we always had done, except without an in-person kickoff, for instance. But, those were always sort of asynchronous, and each mentor mentee themselves setting things up. So I don't think that changed too much. But in terms of like wellness, we moved, for instance, from having on-site yoga to eventually having ClassPass so that people can, go where they want to go, and there's still some sort of virtual yoga. So I think the company, definitely our HR people team has really focused on what can we do to continue to support and offer the kinds of benefits that I think people want. From a diversity perspective, we've had really awesome panels and fireside chats where our ERGs, they organize to bring people in, and that's been a really great way to connect. Foursquare is across like 3-4 different offices primarily. And so it's been a great way actually to build relationships across the offices. So I think they've done a great job. In engineering specifically, we've done different virtual activities. Like, our SVP of engineering, maybe like 20 people sign up and we're going to like make dumplings together or do some painting. And so I think investing small amounts of that sort of budget to be able to show people you can connect and still find ways to connect in sort of smaller group settings. It doesn't work the same way as in person, but there's absolutely ways you can connect and build relationships remotely.
Shay, Alex?
I can jump in. I love what Mariena said. Like, it's you gotta find the ways for people to connect, right, throughout in-person, remote, what have you. I think the trouble I've had is like, I feel like I'm continually having to like innovate there too in some scenarios, because it's like we'll do an online game night, or we'll play a game, like, I don't know. And at some point people are like, I'm just tired of Zoom. Like, I love y'all, but like I just can't do this again. So we like interesting things, right? Where hey, let's take our hackathon and like get the team invested and switch up our org structure so we do something different, or quite frankly just switching people on teams, just like finding new ways for them to get exposure and insight to other individuals. We do a lot to bring in external speakers and do different sessions with the teams. We've thought about like, how do you play with the format and medium of those? So some we do that are just entirely just audio based, and the entire idea is like, go on a walk. The next hour, you don't need to look at your screen. Just go on a walk, right? We'll talk. So things like that. Like, John, I don't know that I have like an answer that I'm like, this is what you should do. Like, I think the answer is more like, keep thinking about it, because what you are doing will probably go out of style and your team's going to want something different. And that, like, that's okay, right? That's just where we're at today.
Yeah, for sure. I think, in the events business, as we are doing as well, it's the same idea, right? You have to innovate as you go. If you run the same, whether it's live or virtual, if you run the same conference year over year and the same, novelties that are going on each time, they're not novel the second or third time around, right? Like you say, people are just, if you're on your 6th Zoom call today, and it's a Zoom call, but with the team having fun, it's still a Zoom call. You know what I mean? So, Alex, any thoughts of jumping in here?
Well, I really think people are different. Some people like to have game nights, whereas others just prefer to spend time with their kids. So I think there's that distinction is really important. I've been working remotely for 10 years, and I've seen all sorts of different attempts at improving remote work. And I think there's no solution that will fit everyone. So whatever it is, make it optional, and it might be better to just, like maybe people should just go and hang out with their families, so they can come motivated to work.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. Everybody is different, and by doing what we've been doing over the last couple of years, there's less of a divide, if you will, between the personal and the professional, because everybody is working from home, and so respecting that a lot tends to be a winning strategy for an engineering organization, because a lot of the times, and with these engineering organizations spread now even more so remotely across the world and in different time zones, that becomes a challenge as you go as well. Organizing things, in one time zone, unless you have simply just one office, but most don't anymore, even small engineering teams on the startup level. Okay, we're gonna shift gears here a little bit, because we've got 3 engineering leaders here on the fireside chat, and I want to talk to you guys about sort of your career paths and choosing that career path. What made you choose to be an engineering leader, an engineering manager? How did you get there? And for everybody that's here listening, that are engineers or engineering managers, or at one stage or another of their careers, some tips and some best practices and some insights as to, why you did what you did as you are doing now, and leading engineering organizations at different stages in your companies. Mariena, we're going to start with you this time.
Sure. I have a very zigzaggy career. I've been working in tech for coming up on 20 years, and started, working on internal tools pretty quickly. Within a few years, rose to engineering manager. I was at Yahoo at a time of very high growth. And so, they need to introduce more levels. So early in my 20s, I was already moving into engineering management. But within maybe after 6 years, I kind of wanted to be more involved in decision making and strategy and the customer. So I actually moved into product management. I had done a little stint as in data quality as sort of a technical, I don't know if it wasn't really a project manager. It was before data engineering existed, if you will. So I don't really know if there was a title. But I did some interesting stuff there, helping Yahoo move onto the cloud, coming up with best practices around data quality, and then moved into product management. After 4 years of that, it was kind of like, well, I don't think I want to do this the rest of my life. What do I want to do when I grow up? And at that point, 10 years into my career, right, getting into my 30s. And I ended up talking to an old colleague about how I enjoy solving problems and some of the problems I had solved in the last 10 years. And he was like, well, we don't have a product role, but we have this other thing. And I was like, that's cool. I don't want to stay in product. I don't know what that is, but if you need someone who's good at solving problems, it sounds fun. And that was my first time at a startup also. So I kind of have worked from a really large company, 10,000 plus, mid-sized companies, and then had my startup experience and moved from sort of core engineering and tooling to product to then sales and solutions engineering, solutions architecture, and getting to work directly with customers and scope. And that was really cool for me because you get to solve business problems and technical problems at the same time. And if you like context switching and jumping all over the place, it's a really cool space. So I've been in that now for several years and really enjoy it. So that's kind of the mix.
And you bring up an interesting, what I zeroed in was problem solving, right? It seems like when I talk to a lot of engineering managers and technical managers, that becomes, when you really boil it down, one of the biggest features of why some people, not all, but a lot of them seem to get into it. Shay, I see you nodding a little bit there on some of what Maria is saying. What are your thoughts? Where are you at with this?
Yeah, I think a lot of people stumbled into it. My background's more in design, if you will. As a kid, I was the one in the coloring books and going a little wild. So I went to school and studied design, but it's always been about how to use design to solve a problem, right? Not just being artistic for the sake of it. And as a designer, that led me more into engineering because I was I could design this, but I don't know if I'm designing what's even possible to build or how difficult of an ask that is. And quite frankly, I don't unless we build this, I don't know if it actually even worked. I don't know if that's what the customer or end user really wanted from it. So I just started to learn more about engineering from that aspect. And that just ballooned and grew, right? And I think a lot of people ask me shit, what should I be learning today? What are the languages? What are the practices? What if you were to rewind history, how would you do it? And I would say my learning has always been around that idea of problem solving, Jonathan. It hasn't been I'm going to learn JavaScript first, and then I'm going to learn Ruby, and then it's going to be C#. It's been no, I have a problem. How do I solve it, right? What do I need to learn to actually solve that and deliver that, if you will? I guess in a weird way, is to misquote Tupac Shakur. It's I didn't choose the engineering life chose me, right? You just we gotta you figure it out as you go, in some respects. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, the problem solving, and I do remember I had one of my engineering professors back in the day, a long time ago, just always say it that way too. And when you said that, Mariena, it just brought that back where, as an engineer, it can be about the programming language, but in general, those are going to change, right? It just so happened that JavaScript had a very long staying power on web coding on the web. But in other aspects, if you change jobs, go to different things, you may be having to learn a new programming language. You may have it, but it's not about the programming language itself, as you say, Shay. It's about, well, how do I solve this problem? Okay, now I guess I have to go learn Ruby, right? If that's how I solve the problem, that's what I'll do. And it's sort of coming at it the opposite way of where, as you say, somebody says, well, which programming language should I use? It's not as simple as of a question as that necessarily, because your question back to them is, well, what problem are you trying to solve? And then I can tell you where to go and go from there. So, Alex, what are your thoughts on your venture into engineering management?
I think the somewhat always naturally tended to be more of a leader where I worked at, because although working as an engineer, I graduated in business administration. So I think I've always just had it incorporated in me, the notion of risk management. So whenever I was coding something or starting a project, I would talk in those terms. I think that helped. But I think jumping forward in time, I think what really drives me as a manager is the notion of being a force multiplier. As a developer, you're basically adding, right? And you're an individual, an IC, and as you grow into staff and architect positions, there's so much breadth that you can act on. You start being more of a multiplier in that sense. But I think the management track is really, when you have the environment that you need to operate. I think it's where it gives you the track really and the conditions to be a force multiplier, because then everything that you've learned all these years, you can help others in special ways.
Okay, guys, I wish we had more time. I'm being told we are out of time. We could go on and do this for another probably half an hour. This is just getting good. But from that last question, I heard some really good some answers. Mariena talking about problem solving, and Shay, you mentioned building and designing, right? Going from a design aspect, and then Alex leading and being a force multiplier. I think all of those features sort of, and more, sum up a lot of what engineering management is all about. And, everybody comes to it from a different perspective, which is the great part about it. But it is an interesting way of, taking that. I think, Alex, as you just mentioned, when you're designing things or you're doing something as an engineer, it's one thing. But as an engineering manager, you're being able to sort of harness what you've learned along the way and be able to sort of, in a sense, give back to your team, give back to the product that you're working on and the company that you're working for. So with that, guys, we're going to have to cut this one off. I appreciate all your time for joining us here at the Fireside Chat. Mariena, Shay, Alex, thanks for joining us here at our day one VIP Fireside Chat. That's it for day one, everybody. We will be back tomorrow on the main stage and in our second stage and with the Expo Open as well. So join us again tomorrow. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.